Hi everyone, my name is Lisa Gonzalez and I am a McNair Scholar at the University of Florida. I work in the Brain, Language, and Bilingualism lab under Dr. Rossi, who is my research mentor, and we are currently working on a project titled The Effect of Bilingualism on Moral Decision Making. So the purpose of the study is to investigate how language context modifies decision-making tendencies. Based on the literature review that I have done, I hypothesize that when people are presented with moral dilemmas in a foreign language, they will be more likely to make utilitarian decisions, given that foreign language processing invokes usually an increase in deliberation when answering a response instead of intuition, meaning that people will slow down and think more about their responses and think logically and not emotionally when it comes to moral dilemmas. However, it has been shown that this may not be the case with highly proficient bilinguals. The foreign language effect itself is a phenomenon that describes the use of foreign language, how the use of foreign language really affects the contribution of deliberation and intuition to one's decision. A foreign language is a language learned later in life, past childhood, usually in a classroom context instead of at home, where you learn your native tongue with your parents. That language definitely has a more emotional aspect to it. The foreign language effect can be seen in three domains: risk-taking, illusory correlations, and morality. My study precisely focuses on the use of foreign language and how it can lead bilinguals to alter their moral decision-making tendencies. As for literature review, previous literature has revealed that foreign language processing causes a more utilitarian choices than native language processing. For example, in the footbridge dilemma, if a bilingual were presented with a dilemma in which a person is given the choice to save the life of 5 people if they sacrifice the life of one other person, the participant would be more than twice as likely to sacrifice one life to save 5 others if they are presented the question in a foreign language. Research also indicates that the foreign language effect causes a decrease in processing fluency, right? This is when participants kind of slow down and think more carefully. And as a result, it increases deliberation and it causes the utilitarian value of, the greater good to outweigh moral rules like that of not causing harm to others. Of course, this observation is not limited to specific languages or cultures because it has been replicated with several native and foreign languages on various occasions. When it comes to highly proficient bilinguals, it's a different case. A study showed that with highly proficient bilinguals, there was actually a decrease in the number of utilitarian decisions made in their second language versus their native language. But this experiment in particular, both languages were closely related and the moral decisions were presented in written form. The experiment was later on replicated and the moral dilemmas were presented in spoken form, and it showed that the number of utilitarian decisions made in their second language actually increased instead of decreasing, like the first experiment. And although we don't really know the reason behind this discrepancy in data, it can be deducted that highly proficient bilinguals may not, or to a lesser extent, experience a foreign language effect, given that there is more emotionality in their second language if they are highly proficient in that language, if they use it every day, if they use it with family and friends. There is more emotionality in their second language as compared to a person who learned a foreign language but isn't proficient. As for gaps in research, right? What don't we know yet? Well, it's unknown whether language context really affects individuals' responses to situations that do not carry emotional connotations. We're testing this with moral dilemmas, and moral dilemmas invoke an incredible amount of emotionality. You're asking a person, basically, for example, in the footbridge dilemma, to choose between the life of one person or 5. And then we also don't know how the foreign language effect truly manifests itself in highly proficient bilinguals, given that results from studies contradict each other. So that is still something we are yet to uncover. As for my methodology, so I did conduct a literature review and I used databases such as SAGE Open, PubMed, Taylor and Francis, and I use keywords like bilingualism, foreign language effect, decision making, etc. In the Brain, Language, and Bilingualism Lab, for this project specifically, data is collected by digitally presenting participants with written moral dilemmas and asking them to rate how morally acceptable each one is, 0 being completely unacceptable, 10 being completely acceptable. Participants then are surveyed on their verbal fluency and language background, and we cross-reference this to the results of the moral dilemmas. The data is collected using the Qualtrics software. As for conclusions, so what we do know is that the foreign language effects does in fact influence bilinguals' moral decision-making tendencies. However, we don't know if these effects, the use of foreign language affects people's responses in situations that do not carry emotional connotation, like we said before. We haven't really covered this yet. Also, we don't really know how it works in highly proficient bilinguals, as stated previously. We don't know why there's discrepancy in the data. We don't know why, in the case of written moral dilemmas, the utilitarian decisions in their second language decrease, while the utilitarian decisions increased when the participants were presented with spoken moral dilemmas. So it's also a discrepancy in data that leaves us thinking about, why this occurs in highly proficient bilinguals. As for my next steps, I will be continuing to test participants and analyze the data from the Qualtrics survey that we have already gotten in order to identify trends and themes in the data. For future research, I will be working on a project titled The Influence of Accentiveness on Moral Decision-Making in the fall of 2022, alongside Dr. Rossi as well in the Brain, Language, and Bilingualism Lab. I would like to extend a very, very big thank you to my mentor, Dr. Rossi, for all her guidance and support, as well as to Dr. Barnes and Dr. Villegas for their support this past semester in the McNair program. And these are my works cited. Thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed my presentation.